Durante este Latam Conference 2021, tuvimos la oportunidad de platicar con Robert Reymond, especialista en impuestos con más de 20 años de experiencia asesorando instituciones financieras y familias de alto patrimonio en América Latina, Canadá y Europa, sobre estructuración patrimonial internacional con un enfoque en impuestos, intercambio de información, planificación patrimonial y el entorno regulatorio internacional. No olvides suscribirte a Hablemos TV, el canal jurídico financiero.
Sure, great. Well, nice to be here, and thank you for the offer to be interviewed. Tax transparency comes in probably two different forms. One form relates to information exchange. So where one country obtains information and then gives it to another. But tax transparency could also refer to information that is just simply publicly available. And that might be information that is on a register of beneficial owners of companies, for example, that is publicly available. So a tax authority could go online and look at that information. So those are the two types of tax transparency. Oh, the OECD is hugely active in this area, and has been active in this area for over 20 years, mainly looking at information exchange and developing international standards for information exchange, both on request and for countries to provide information to each other automatically for tax enforcement purposes. Mr. Gurria has transformed the OECD into an outward-looking organization, very focused on tax, on information exchange, and I think there will be more focus coming on enforcement as well. I think mainly it does not affect the lives of average citizens, because governments are not interested in a lot of international information about regular citizens. They are interested quite clearly in information regarding wealthier families. So when you say average, I'm talking about the level of wealth maybe in a family. Average wealth probably less interesting internationally from an international perspective. The more the wealth the family has, the more interesting tax authorities will be in what that family is doing on an international level. Well, initially the OECD is mainly concerned about tax, and that's tax information exchange, tax enforcement. So that's where the initial drivers are. But that is changing a little bit, and the OECD and the grouping of Latin American countries that have signed up to the Punta del Este Declaration. There's a motivation to move beyond tax and to tackle illicit financial flows of information. So that means that the OECD is moving beyond tax and looking at other types of crimes like corruption, for example. Well, what I've seen in the recent OECD paper on tax transparency in Latin America is that in 2019 there were 2.1 million financial accounts that were disclosed to Latin American tax authorities under the Common Reporting Standard.
Okay.
So that is a very significant number, 2.1 million accounts. Yeah. And in addition to that, the Latin American tax authorities, or at least some of them, would have received information from the United States as well under the FATCA intergovernmental agreements. So there's a lot of information that is being exchanged, that is being given to Latin American tax authorities. While the world was in lockdown in 2020, the OECD trained over 1,100 tax officials in Latin America. That's a difficult question. I do think that the trend is towards more audits of individuals. Traditionally, audits in the region have been more with companies and with multinationals, but now we are seeing more audits of individuals, families as well. Well, that's a little bit more, I think that's a little bit more difficult, and it might depend on what type of advisor you're talking about. I'm a lawyer, so in the legal community, professional privilege, confidentiality is a cornerstone of a legal system. That there is solicitor-client privilege between a client and their lawyer. So in that context, I would not see auditing of advisors. But maybe advisors outside of the legal world that don't have the benefit of privilege because they exercise a different function in society and versus the legal system. Maybe there will be more audits. I don't think it's a reality yet.
Okay.
At the moment, what we see is a lot of information that's going between jurisdictions, and that has increased substantially. But it may very well be that what the OECD wants to look at in the future is more cross-border enforcement, cross-border collection of tax debts. I think for the two very simple things for families in the region to consider, one is to take advice, and the second is to, when they're taking advice, is to review their affairs, review their financial affairs, their business affairs, to determine how robust those affairs are, and maybe think about it in the context of what happens if there is an audit. What happens if they are audited? And look at it from that perspective when you're going through your review of your personal and business affairs.